Welcome back. President Joe Biden is proposing a new rule that would close the so-called gun show loophole. The plan would require anyone who is selling a gun for a profit to get a federal license and conduct a criminal background check, whether they sell the weapon in a store or at a gun show. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives currently license roughly 80,000 brick-and-mortar gun dealers. However, gun sales are increasingly happening outside of that system and being done without background checks. The new rule will go through the federal rulemaking process and will surely be challenged in court by Second Amendment activists. The White House is also urging Congress to pass a short-term government funding measure to avoid a shutdown at the end of the month. The Biden administration is asking lawmakers to approve money for cash-starved programs such as nutritional aid. But the Office of Management and Budget warns that a stopgap won't be enough, saying programs like WIC need an extra $1.4 billion. Without that money, officials say the government may be forced to put families on waiting lists, causing women and children to go hungry and into poverty. But some House Republicans want to roll back programs for nutritional aid. Those far-right lawmakers are breaking from the deal that Speaker Kevin McCarthy negotiated with President Biden back in the spring to raise the nation's debt limit. That agreement was supposed to prevent another stalemate over spending. Joining us now, someone following this closely, White House reporter at Politico, Adam Cancryn. Adam, great to see you this morning. So let's start there with this, what seems to be impending showdown on government funding. Give us just a briefing as to where everyone stands, the likelihood of a short-term resolution to keep things spending. When's the government going to run out of money?
Yeah, so the big deadline here is September 30th. Congress needs to essentially solve this and get a deal that would take us at least through December without a government shutdown. Now, if you remember, we went through this back during the spring when there was a concern about going over and going through the debt ceiling. That would have been an economic catastrophe. Congress, the president, were able to work out a deal that averted that. As part of that, the idea was that things would be settled once we got to the fall. We wouldn't have to go through another big spending fight. But as you mentioned, House conservatives, the Freedom Caucus, have now kind of tried to go back on that deal, saying, actually, we want to revisit it. We want more spending cuts. That's created now this stalemate. There's some big decisions that are going to be made when the House comes back September 12th. Kevin McCarthy, the speaker there, needs to determine what he can get support for in his own caucus, while also still trying to keep his word to the deal that he made with the White House.
And certainly a part of this, too, is also Ukraine funding. That's going to be part of this negotiation. So, Adam, let's say that a short-term resolution is reached now that kicks the can down the road to December. Would that be potentially more likely that we could be staring at a government shutdown then?
If we can somehow avoid this now, yes, there's a likelihood that we're going to be right back here in December. The hope, though, as you mentioned, with the supplemental funding, there's about $40 billion that the White House is seeking. That is for Ukraine aid, for disaster relief, like we've seen is needed in Hawaii and also now in Florida and the southern states. Right now, that's kind of the top priority because that is money that's needed urgently just to fill the gap over the next 3 months. So the way that the White House is looking at this, the way that Democrats, Republicans in Congress who are trying to get a short-term deal are looking at it is let's just get through September 30th. We'll worry about December later on, but there is money that's needed now that needs to be secured now through this short-term deal.
And Adam, lastly and briefly, the gun show proposal that we just read through, how likely is this proposal to becoming law?
Well, this is something that you're seeing the administration try to do on its own. There's obviously not the bipartisan will in Congress to make big changes in terms of gun safety. And so this is something that the administration can essentially do on its own through administrative regulations. The pathway is clear there. The question is, again, what kind of lawsuits will we see, what kind of court challenges, and how long that will tie up the ability for the administration to finalize that rule and get it actually into action.
Yeah, the White House had been looking for a while to find some sort of executive action they could still take. They've found this. We'll see what happens in the courts. Really good reporting this morning. Adam Cancryn, White House reporter at Politico, who is traveling with the president this weekend when he goes down to see the hurricane damage in Florida. Safe travels, Adam. Thank you for being with us this morning. Up next.